one last time.
So I just watched The Silence, latest episode at this time from Gumball, and I gotta say, it's not bad. I don't have a strong attachment towards the episode, but it does cover a lot of points that I just never got around to. It was released a while ago in other areas, but just aired in the US. So if you ever wanted to know how it feels to not have an episode immediately when it's released, there you go. What's that? You didn't even notice it was a serious delay? You didn't even realize a new episode was out? You kind of figure out what's new when you see a video on it? Well, okay. Guess I gotta cover more Gumball then.
I'm just saying, how did anybody ever name anything? Was some caveman like, hey guys, I'm gonna call this thing a stone? And everyone else was like, deal. There needs to be some logic so you know what stuff is for. I would have called them mouth shovels.
It's your usual banter on their way to school, which is a subtle way to continue exposition. As you probably saw from the first clip, the episode revolves around them not having much left to say, which can double up as an underlying layer to this season. It's a big complaint that this last season doesn't offer much of what we already have before, besides episodes like the Faith, the Transformations, and the spin-offs, not to be confused with the copycats. This season has a lot of elements that we've gotten from other seasons, sometimes with a better quality before. Gumball and Darwin go back and forth comparing their lunch until...
And this corn is... Dude, I can't think of anything.
Try harder.
Looks like the cat finally has its own tongue. And no, that's not all the tongue statements I have, at least for this video. So then we get Harold Wilson, Tobias's father, who here seems a little closer to being competent and level-headed. While yes, he is poking fun at the validity of counseling, especially to people like Gumball and Darwin, who act like a couple in this episode kind of, just more casually than other episodes. It's weird to see him like this. Remember in the show when he saw Penny and rather than stand his ground or at least call police like his wife did, he essentially ran. What about in the castle when he pretty much goofed around because he couldn't stand his wife's structure and order? To see him pretty much turn into this, while a neat development, it's not like we see him enough to make that jump quick. They exchange money and then get kicked out. Because of the kids are easy to take advantage of cliche. One point that I really wanted to talk about is Mr. Small.
Did someone say alternative medicine?
They really improved this character over the series. When he started out, he was just a weird guidance counselor who was into nature but never really expanded his character beyond that. And upon reflection, I realized that I like a lot of Mr. Small moments. And this entire scene is one of them. The funny thing is, this is not the first time alternative medicine was used as a joke. It's become a running joke of his character towards the later season. He's become the superhero, or sales cloud, of alternative medicine, and the way that he's just zooming into the picture here was just so cartoonish and exaggerated. I loved every bit of it. They go into the forest and we get more Mr. Small's comedy.
The goose is stuck in the hammock.
Yes?
The potato is wedged in your tailpipe.
The last analogy sounded like constipation, and I'm not okay with my guidance counselor guiding me through my constipation. Ugh! Oh my god! It looks like an inside-out nose. Just everything about this looks wrong. This isn't a permanent change, but my god was that disgusting. One thing I do love about this episode is that we actually get around to seeing a lot of new areas that we don't see often. Contrast this with other episodes I've talked about, the drama, the matchmaker, the shell, the puppets. All of these episodes, plus the last one I talked about, the transformations, pretty much happen within a few settings. Here we went from the bus to school, all the way to a dark alley of an unlicensed doctor, and coming from someone who loves the visuals of Gumball, I appreciate it. We get two more jokes that I appreciate, for different reasons. This little dropping in conversation to provide an instant example of how they can't keep up a conversation, and this.
Yeah, it goes limper than an animator's handshake.
They decide to take up playing a character and talk to each other through that character to see if they can find more things to say. I just find it funny that Gumball says,
If it works for fedora wizards in some basement, why not us?
because literally in the previous episode, The Masters, they're literally playing Dungeons and literally Dragons. Pardon my literally spam, but like you were just that fedora wizard in the basement like yesterday.
Oh, hey, I'm Akane-chan. I'm not used to talk to people. Asterisk blushes and turns away. You want to be friends with Akane? What? Question mark. Equals my message not going through? Chat with me now and win dollars.
This isn't even a joke. This is like the most accurate thing on the internet. And it's always on chat platforms that can't even police the bots. Also, being on the internet, I've actually seen a ton of Akane-chans. Chans? Wow. Okay, let's try it again. Also, being on the internet, I've seen a lot of Akane-chans, or whatever Gumball said, whether for good or for worse. In fact, going back to the bots, there was always this one bot on Twitter where anytime you talked about cartoons, they always replied with the same garbage reply. Like it, let us show you our cartoons. And basically, it was political comics that had nothing to do with the conversation, and it wasn't interesting at all, but every time I mentioned cartoons, they reply with the same tweet. And my god, did I want to punch a hole in their automated reply. But anyway, this next part, I do want to give a little criticism. They're eating and trying to strike up a conversation, but apparently the episode wants to switch over to Nicole for some reason, trying to get Richard to have a better posture, and basically being disappointed with the results. This leads into Gumball doing the same thing, even though it didn't work there and here. If this were a show in which I didn't have a strong liking for Nicole or Richard, I would have called that padding, almost as if the episode is too short. That plus the song really made this episode seem empty. This is why it's a good but not great episode. Had they went from eating dinner to essentially wanting to break communications for a while, nothing would change except the entire family would be introduced later in the episode. Getting to the song though, I do enjoy the subtle touch here. It will make sense once we get to the end. But Darwin assumes that Gumball doesn't know what he's going to say, because he didn't say it just yet. But Gumball guesses correctly. This is actually a clever hint that you would not notice upon first viewing, that I appreciate upon the second viewing. But getting to the song, I do like it, and I think it was a neat touch to have the song be out of sync to represent how they perceive each other to be out of sync. But in reality, because both Gumball and Darwin kept to the same lyrics, it has that second layer of both of them really understanding each other on a deeper level. The climax, or at least this part here where Darwin gets trapped in the car, just seems a little lackluster. I mean, I get why it needs to be done so that later on Gumball can use his intuition and experience with Darwin to get back in touch with him. But remember earlier in this review where I talked about maybe there's an underlying message in this episode, being that possibly the show has ran out of things to say? Well, this whole climax in and of itself was something that we've heard before. When Darwin was lost in the origins, Gumball found him by not losing hope and communicating via heartbeat, or basically something that's not a real thing, not something that you can touch. Now yes, this is slightly different, but both of these endings rely on a strong bond between Darwin and Gumball and their intangible way of communicating with each other that eventually brings them back together, even down to who is in trouble, both times being Darwin. And that really makes this episode not as good as it would be. And that isn't nitpicking, because this is nitpicking.
36, 37.
What are you counting?
The number of seconds Darwin would have held his breath as he walked past that hot dog stand because he thinks breathing in the smell is stealing if you don't pay for it. 38, 39. He would have gotten woozy at this point and needed some fresh air.
That wouldn't be 38 seconds. It would actually be more, considering that you stopped to reply while holding your breath, so your measurements would have been off. But on the whole, the song's okay, the climax is okay. It was a neat touch to have Darwin's side being in the areas in which Gumball would look later on in the episode, and wholesome ending is wholesome.
I think I know what happened, Darwin. We know each other so well, we don't even need to talk anymore.
Really? What am I thinking right now?
You're thinking, please remove your knee from my crotch.
It's true.
They in on this joke, and this was the silence. I do read the comments, and I saw a lot of people wanting me to cover the Faith. The next video I'm doing involves me talking about animation changes involving Gumball, but the next time I do review The Amazing World of Gumball, you have my promise, The Faith. So in the meantime, if you want to check out my entire Gumball playlist, go here, particularly The Money. Until next time, special thanks to the patrons of May, and I'll talk to you guys next time. Take care. Alpha out.